I welcome all of you in the room and those of you on Zoom. Faith tells me to ask you on Zoom to turn off your microphones and also turn off your cameras. I will begin with the lighting of the chalice. We light this chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through, to enlighten our ways. That new truth is ever waiting to break through, to illumine our minds, and that new love is ever waiting to break through, to warm our hearts. So I have some words that I will share, and then I'll take this microphone and we'll pass it around, and we'll have a couple of rounds. I'll have 2 questions, and I'll ask everybody who wants to weigh in on the first question to do so, and then we'll sing a little song. And then we'll have the second question, and I'll ask you all to weigh in on that. Love is at the center of what we are about as a people of faith. And so we resist, sometimes more successfully than others, the temptation to give in to hate. Our watchwords are the ones from Martin Luther King Jr. that we often quote. It's from a sermon he seems to have delivered in 1957 in Montgomery titled, "Loving Your Enemies." Why should we love our enemies? The first reason is fairly obvious. Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Hate multiplies hate, violence multiplies violence, and toughness multiplies toughness in a descending spiral of destruction. I know it's hard today to think of loving our enemies when we feel disempowered, as though our neighbors have decided that everything we learned to hold most dear is of no account, doesn't matter anymore. Caring about other people, trying to tell the truth and live with integrity, justice, equity, rule of law. It's hard right now to say yes to the world as it is. A poem by Rosemary Watola Tromer, posted late last night, is titled, "When You Ask Me If I Can Say Yes to the World as It Is," November 5th, 2024. Today, yes is made of lead. You look at me, and I nod, and together we carry the weight. The president-elect has promised mass deportations. He's promised retribution against the enemy within, which, in his mind, is you and me and people like us. The people he will appoint will set to work implementing Project 2025, which will gut enforcement of civil rights laws, appropriate the Department of Justice to go after its enemies, seek to exclude non-citizens from the census count, attack reproductive rights, ban mifepristone, and prosecute people who send medication abortion drugs in the mail, expand digital surveillance to enforce laws against women seeking to exercise their reproductive rights, proliferate online misinformation and disinformation by ending ongoing federal efforts to combat online disinformation, enact Schedule F reforms that would force tens of thousands of civil servants, including in agencies that protect civil rights, to serve the president's political aims instead of serving the public interest. Erase the very existence of communities by deleting the terms sexual orientations, gender and gender identity, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract grant regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. Weaken the Fair Housing Act and scale back affordable housing. Weaken key provisions of the Affordable Care Act, which helps millions of people gain health care coverage. End the American climate leadership on the international stage, which would harm Americans and prevent the global community from achieving climate goals necessary to maintain a livable planet. Will the coming administration succeed at these things? We don't know. Comedian Jon Stewart said, here's what we know. We don't really know anything. We're going to come out of this election and we're going to make all kinds of pronouncements about what this country is and what this world is. And the truth is, we're not really going to know. This isn't the end, Stewart continued. I promise you, it's not the end. And we have to regroup. And we have to continue to fight and continue to work day in and day out to create the better society for our children, for this world, for this country that we know is possible. It's possible. Tom Nichols, writing in The Atlantic, said, the first order of business is to redouble every effort to preserve American democracy. Nothing is inevitable, and democracy will not fall overnight. If there was ever a time to exercise the American right of free assembly, it's now. Not least because Trump is determined to end such rights and silence his opponents. Americans must stay engaged and make their voices heard at every turn. They should find and support organizations and institutions committed to American democracy, and especially those determined to fight Trump in the courts. They must encourage candidates in the coming 2026 elections who will oppose Trump's plans and challenge his legislative enablers. Trump's victory is a grim day for the United States and for democracies around the world. You have every right to be appalled, saddened, shocked, and frightened. Soon, however, you should dust yourself off, square your shoulders, take a deep breath. Americans who care about democracy have work to do. End quote. We are called to live from compassion. Let's remember the broader context. For much of the last 3,000 years, much of humanity lived under autocratic rule. Archaeologists and anthropologists have been uncovering details of earlier civilizations and ways of living that exhibited all sorts of diverse political arrangements. Hundreds of thousands of people living together without a ruling hierarchy. Peoples without kings, or kings that were purely ceremonial, or kings for a season, and then the duties rotated. Nothing about the way humans are built makes autocracy inevitable. For much of humanity's time on the planet, we didn't live under autocratic rule. And then, for a few thousand years, much of humanity did. We were beginning to work our way out of it. And if we take a step backward for a century or two, we can nevertheless return to working our way out of it. Our work, we who are alive here and now, is very much the same, whichever candidate won the White House. Our task is compassion. Our task is empathy and understanding. Our task is to help one another. Our task is that every voice be heard. Our task is respect for every being's worth and dignity. Our task is to forthrightly and creatively rise to meet all the challenges we discussed just 10 days ago at our climate justice revival. These are tough tasks, no matter who's the president, or who is in the U.S. Senate and House, or who sits on the Supreme Court. Our task is the same. And so we gather because we draw strength from each other. And we need a little boost right now to carry out that task. We gather because we draw joy from each other. And joy is a subversive activity. Joy is resistance to injustice. So let me share these words from Rebecca Solnit, and then I want to hear from you. She writes, they want you to feel powerless and to surrender and to let them trample everything you are not going to let them. You are not giving up, and neither am I. The fact that we cannot save everything does not mean we cannot save anything, and everything we can save is worth saving. You may need to grieve, or scream, or take time off, but you have a role, no matter what. Right now, good friends and good principles are worth gathering in. Remember what you love. Remember what loves you. Remember in this tide of hate what love is. The pain you feel is because of what you love. The Wobblies used to say, don't mourn, organize, but you can do both at once. And you don't have to organize right away in this moment of furious mourning. You can be heartbroken or furious or both at once. You can scream in your car or on a cliff. You can also get up tomorrow and water the flower pots and call someone who's upset and check your equipment for going forward. A lot of us are going to come under direct attack. And a lot of us are going to resist by building solidarity and sanctuary. Gather up your resources, the metaphysical ones that are heart and soul and care, as well as the practical ones. People kept the faith in the dictatorships of South America in the 1970s and 1980s, in the East Bloc countries and the USSR. Women are protesting right now in Iran, and people there are writing poetry. There is no alternative to persevering, and that does not require you to feel good. You can keep walking, whether it's sunny or raining. Take care of yourself. And remember that taking care of something else is an important part of taking care of yourself. Because you are interwoven with the 10 trillion things in this single garment of destiny that has been stained and torn, but is still being woven and mended and washed. End quote. In this time, we need each other, and we need to hear each other's voices. We need the help of each other's words to make sense of what happened. And so I will invite your reflection on two questions. One, what is going on? As best as you can figure, how do you account for how this election went the way it did? So we'll have a round of sharing reflections on that question. How did this election happen to come out the way it did? And then we'll sing a song, and then I'll come back and I'll ask you the second question, what will you be doing about it? So the first question, what is going on? How did this election happen? Your thoughts?
I'm Louise Alford. If any of you saw any of my services on fear, this is what I was talking about. That people are afraid, and many, many times they're being made afraid of things that actually aren't real. But we have to, I think, open our hearts to the fact that they're afraid. And we need to listen to why they're afraid and see if we can somehow speak a truth that lessens their fear and perhaps gives them other options. And I think that's the only thing we can do moving forward. Plus vote again in 2 years and change this all over. But I think we forget that people are afraid. It's not that they're stupid. It's not that they're ignorant. It's that the fear keeps them from seeing truths, and it keeps them from seeing reality. And I think we need to open our hearts to that fear and see what we can do about it.
And all I can tell people to do for moving forward is love those around you, keep spreading kindness, because unfortunately we live in a world where that may not be the case. And I think the only thing we can do is to do it for one another. I'm glad we have the community here in our church where we can do that for one another, but it has to spread beyond the doors for its impact. So I encourage you to reach out to someone, have a conversation, be a shoulder for someone, be a safe place, because people are going to need it in those communities.
Well, let's have a little song. This is in our hymnal. It's just got 4 lines.
You're probably new enough to
We'll sing it through 3 times, and if you don't know it at first, you'll know it soon.
Hugs are also provided.
I know this rose will I know my fears will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fears will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fears will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. What are we going to do? What will you commit to doing as your part of the resistance? And I want to urge everyone to reflect on that question, whether you end up coming up to share about that or not. And then when those who are ready and want to share what you'll do, then I invite you to come on up and do so.
The last couple of weeks, Lord give Jordan. The last couple of weeks or months, I've been telling myself and even telling some other people going, oh, I know it's going to be bad and I'm ready for it. I was saying this, because in part I work in a lot of countries where it's really bad. There's so much corruption and violence and ego, there's no way, hardly for people or beings to flourish. So I said, oh, it's going to be okay. He's probably going to win and I'm going to be okay. So lest you think that I'm an enlightened being, my work in other countries is very wearisome. It's very tiring. I often just want to quit because I just don't want to do it anymore. So when the election results came in and we were listening to it all night, like, it's okay. Well, it hit like a hammer. I was not prepared for it. And I just sort of feel this heaviness in my body and depression. I am going to get to what I'm going to commit to, so just hang in there with me. Someone said, and I'm even going to point to someone who preached this, that reality is never depressing. Well, I think sometimes it is depressing, maybe not permanently, but for a time. We feel it in our body. We feel the hurt, we feel the pain, we feel the fear. And so that's part of what I'm committed to do it, is to just feel that. That's there. That is definitely there. And because to me, the body heaviness, what our emotions are, tells us what matters. It tells me what's important. It tells me who I love and what I need and what they need. And it tells me that beauty never goes away. It's always, always present. So even though the external world changed and is constantly changing in very harsh ways, the internal affirmation doesn't change. I just forget it and it gets hard to affirm it. And the days are sometimes just really hard and long to try to remember that beauty that's there. I do a lot of teaching around emotional intelligence, and they've done studies that show that fully substantiated care to care for this world, people need to be able to do 3 things. And so I try to do them. Feel everything. Healing the world is not about feeling comfortable, it's about feeling everything. You have to know stuff. The cognitive piece, your book list. And you need to find an outlet to take action. That's where the help comes in, with those three pieces. So I think as the day went on today, I was able to do that, right? See beauty, think about this, take steps in some of the conservation parent work that I do. And so I said, oh, I'm going to be able to come back from this. This is going to be okay, because I'm going to remember beauty. And I knew I had you all to talk to tonight. So I think part of my commitment is to continue coming here and being part of this congregation, to be reaffirmed about beauty and love. So I'll sum up what my commitment is that we have some chalice extinguishing words at the climate revival. And it comes out of the Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi. Rose says to Finn, winning this battle is not about fighting what we hate, but about saving what we love. And I think, well, if we can, there's so much beauty and light in the world, if we can just keep that in the center, love at the center, how can we not reflect that light out into the world?
I know I said it a little bit. Earlier, but being that shoulder or that safe space for a person is tremendous. There are some smaller movements people are doing, like wearing a safety pin. It might not seem like much, but it's a small, subtle thing that people can see and know that you're a safe person to turn to. Just knowing resources you can pass along to individuals. The Trevor's Hotline is a great one for that. They are also pointing people to other crisis services if they need them. And I think if you can give your time to any of those services or contributions in any way that you can or are able, that's an amazing way to support. Planned Parenthood is another great association you can support and help. So that's one thing that I can do. Writing your legislation is another big one. Taking your time to sit down and write to your local legislation is the biggest one, because they're the people who represent you and they're supposed to represent their area, so writing to them so they can bring your information forward. I think another thing is, like Meredith said, taking care of yourself. I really believe in a glass half full, and I'm really trying to believe in it right now. And I think one thing you can do is, as long as you're nourishing yourself, you can help nourish others. And even if that seems really, really hard right now, if that means that you have an extra treat with your dinner tonight, do it. I know we probably all have had dinner already, but that's just one small thing you can do for yourself. And that might seem like the world today, but I just want you to know that whoever you are, whatever walk of life you come from, to me, you are human, and I think that's the most important thing we need to remember right now, is that we are all humans. I know that not everyone here believes in God. That's what I was raised to believe, and that's what I do believe. And I think that the biggest thing, going back to what you said about Christian values, to me, the biggest Christian value is God made us all to love one another, and we're not to judge. That's not our job. Our job is to love one another and take care of one another, and we all bleed red at the end of the day. So I genuinely believe if we just treat each other as human and give people that patience and understanding, that can do the world of a difference.
It's not like a cold cheer and a fight like hell. Fight like hell, people. I'm going to organize and educate, as I've been doing for 20 years in the congregation community. There are good Christian people in the city, and they are fighting right alongside with us. So please do not color our Christian siblings in a single swath. They are not. Last summer, I spoke in the pulpit about the basis of my own spiritual being, which is in power, anger, love, and imagination. The Republicans don't have imagination that includes love, and we do. We can influence things. Organized money and organized people are more powerful than some. And the organized money, as Sarah said, is very strong, but we can be the organized people. So, fear not. We have one another, and there are many more like us. You know, we organize in the city and we organize across the country in community organizations all around the U.S. and actually globally, including in Latin America. So, you know, let's fight. Let's just fight.
As some of you know, maybe know, because I talk about it a lot, I'm a public librarian. Right now, I'm dealing with a profession. You may have seen the New York Times article just recently about how we are one of the most stressed professions in the world today. And my colleagues are leaving in droves because they are under threat, both physically and emotionally and socially. So what do? Yesterday, I worked every Tuesday night for 29 years, which means I've worked every election night for 29 years. I work in West Des Moines. People come up to me all day and all evening, right up until 8 o'clock, asking where their precinct is. And I smile, and I look it up, and I tell them where to go, and I moan about how I have to drive 5 minutes to their polling place. And I say, thank you for voting. To be clear, at least 2/3 of the people who are coming to me probably are voting against my better interests, certainly against my professional better interests. But I smile and I look up their polling place and I say, thank you for voting. And then swear in the back room. There's a lot of stuff. But I feel I'm a public servant, and until they close the libraries, which could be next year with the current state legislation, but until they do, I am there to answer questions, to make people maybe a little more informed, a little smarter, a little happier. They want that bodice ripper to, you know, read something fun for that, great. I am there for you. But I feel it's important, and I know many, many, many people in this church are public servants as well. And we're very proud of what we do. And I think when I'm told that I'm a pedophile and a groomer because I give children books, I said all I'm doing is grooming them to read. But, okay. And can I please offer you a nice romance novel? We do what we can, we do the small things. I also give out hugs on a fairly regular basis to my colleagues because it is very, very hard. So, hugs to all of you. And if you need a good vote to read them.
We have grieving to do, and we have action and planning to do. Fortunately, it's possible to do both these things at the same time, or at least to get some of each into each day. I thank you all for coming out tonight. I have been inspired and calmed by hearing your words, and I trust that you have felt that way drawing from each other. And so I'll extinguish this chalice, but not, of course, the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. Go in peace.